Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Andrew Marsh, co-founder of Success Hacker and architect of the Success Coaching Training Program. Finally, this month, I've recovered from my sickness and my jet lag from being in Europe, and you're stuck with me again, not just with Kristi. Thank you for joining us for the CS Mastermind, a monthly conversation designed for both customer success leaders and individual contributors. Whether you're leading a CS organization, managing accounts, supporting customers, or sitting somewhere in between, our goal is simple: help you do work that actually matters. Before we jump in, I want to flag two things quickly, and Ashley will drop the links in the chat so you don't have to scramble to write anything down. First, if you've been looking for a structured, guided path through customer success fundamentals, we just launched our CS Foundations Executive Education Certificate Program in partnership with the University of San Francisco School of Management. I love this program. I've been doing it now for 4 or 5 years through their School of Management. This is a fully coached experience. You're not going through it alone. It's me. I'm joining you every week for 10 weeks. The first live coaching call is next Thursday. So if you've been on the fence, now is the time. Use code USFCSF25 to save 25%. And if you're looking for something you can start at your own pace, our CS Foundations training program is live and ready for you today. This is something that we released the second half of last year, only offered it to our team subscribers. It's now available for individuals. 18 courses covering the full customer lifecycle, designed to take you from a good CSM to a truly strategic one. There's also an optional integrated exercise path where each exercise builds on the last, culminating at a capstone project using our fictional Digisoft vendor and book of business. I spent a lot of time last year putting this thing together. Really excited about it. You can use that fictitious vendor for both our CS Foundations and our value-based selling program. Use code CSF20 to save 20%. Okay, enough of the commercial stuff. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Kristi Faltorusso. At this point, many of you probably know Kristi better than you know me. And honestly, after holding things down on her own more than a few times last year as well as last month, she's probably wondering why we're even bothering to add me back. But one of our goals this year is to actually be in the same virtual room together more often. So you'll be seeing a lot more of both of us going forward. Kristi, great to be back alongside you. Try not to make me look too bad, okay?
I will do my best.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. A few quick housekeeping notes before we begin. This session is being recorded, and the replay and transcript will be shared next week. Please use the Q&A feature for questions. The most upvoted ones will get priority. And use the chat for commentary and reactions. So commentary and reactions in chat, questions in Q&A. LinkedIn Live viewers, you can post questions directly in the comments, which will be relayed to us. Now, I'm excited to introduce today's panel. As always, I'll let our guests introduce themselves to y'all in alphabetical order so you can hear directly about their backgrounds and perspectives. Let's start with David.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Ellin. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I saw a couple of people from Atlanta and Douglasville, so welcome. I'm the Chief Customer Officer of Centric Leadership Strategies and a Senior Customer Success Consultant in Revenue Architecture with Winning by Design. I've worked with hundreds of companies designing go-to-market strategies, customer journeys, playbooks, and more. I'm also a certified executive leadership development coach. In my last corporate role, I was head of CS for a global B2B division of a Fortune 500 company with $1.2 billion in revenue. Personally, I'm an avid reader. I'm a huge pickleball player. I love building expert Lego sets. I have them all over my house. My wife hates me. The Titanic.
I was going to say that's a Lego set back there.
Yeah, like that's like a big thing. Like, awesome. Do you have an entire room or floor of your house dedicated to that?
Largest Lego set ever made.
Nice.
Now I have them all over the place. I am passionate about customer centricity and all that goes along with a deep focus on driving customer outcomes. I'm very active in the Atlanta customer success community, and I'm very happy to be with you guys today.
You see that, David, right there?
Yeah,
that's Lego Yoda. My daughter made that for me.
Nice.
We got big Lego household here. So.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Awesome. Eleni, you're next.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Eleni Vorvis. I'm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I've been in go-to-market roles for just a little over 20 years. I started my career off in sales, but transitioned over to the success world. I found my people in my community. I'm currently the fractional vice president of customer success for Coachum, and I do consulting and workshops for CSM teams as well. I know many of them are making the transition from just focusing on adoption to owning commercial responsibility, retention, and expansion. And in many cases, they don't have the skills necessary because they've never done the job before. And we spend a lot of money and time on supporting sales teams, and I feel CS teams need that training as well. So I'm happy to see there's definitely been a shift, and it's a passion of mine to help to enable these future leaders. In my personal time, I love to work out. I began working with a trainer almost 4 years ago. And now I'm proud to say I enjoy deadlifting and doing other strength training. And bar and Pilates classes are part of my routine as well. And I'm definitely a big foodie. So if you're ever in the Boston area, I keep a list of the latest new restaurant openings, and I can rattle off recommendations.
I've loved, like I mentioned during our pre-call, Boston's one of my favorite areas of the country, and I love the food scene there. So I may take you up on that next time we're.
He does a pretty good list of New York too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So I don't think she's limited to Boston. It might be her longest list, but it's not her only.
Yeah, New York can be difficult.
You can be difficult.
Yes, I know I can be. Yes.
Let's do our last guest.
Yes, and our last but not least, McKayl.
I love this conversation. Hi, McKayl Bergman, most recently Director or Senior Director of Customer Experience at Griffin AI, which is based in Boston, and where I started my Google list for my Boston restaurants. So I'll have to hit you up, Eleni. I have been in a variety of different customer success roles and leadership positions in every flavor of customer success, from the seed stage startups to Series A, B, C, D, E, all the way across the board, and companies of all sorts. And I enjoy variety. So my thrills are from all kinds of growth transformation projects that give me your sticky, complicated, tough situations, and those are what I enjoy most. In my personal time now, I am currently on sabbatical. It's magical and lovely, and I recommend it to most people. And I am enjoying being in touch with the CS community while I enjoy revitalizing my life. I've recently moved from Utah to Portland and really loving the Pacific Northwest.
Awesome. I love that area. As I mentioned, my son's up right across the river from you in Vancouver, so I get up there often to see him. Oh, and Kristi is like my work wife. So anyways.
Does Kristi need any introduction?
I'm just here to babysit Andrew and make sure he does his job and doesn't mess this conversation up.
Yeah, I'm prone to that. That's fine. She keeps me honest. All right. Well, thank you all for being here and for making time to share your experiences with this community. I want to start today with a provocation, and I want you to tell me where I'm wrong. We talk about broken handoffs like they're accidents, like somebody dropped the ball, forgot to send the email, missed the meeting. But what if handoffs fail not because people aren't trying hard enough, but because the system is actually working exactly as it was designed? Think about it. Average tenure in a critical customer-facing role is somewhere between 18 to 24 months. The customer you're trying to keep for 5 or more years will be touched by dozens of people across sales, onboarding, support, and CS, most of whom will be gone before that customer renews a second time. Every one of those teams has its own incentives, its own tools, its own definition of success, and nobody at the top is being measured on whether those things point in the same direction. So the handoff breaks, not because of the handoff, because sales was optimized to close, onboarding was optimized for speed, CS was optimized for retention, and support was optimized to resolve tickets. Nobody was optimized for the customer's experience of all four. Handoffs are a symptom. Misaligned incentives are a symptom. Sales lies is a symptom. The disease that we built organizations around, departmental convenience, and called it a customer journey. And a world where the cost of acquiring a new customer routinely exceeds the revenue from their first year, and where the math only works if they stay long enough to pay back that investment several times over. We can't afford to keep treating symptoms. So let me ask the panel. If the system is producing exactly the results it was designed to produce, what actually has to change?
I'm happy to kick this off. So it's an interesting topic. This one's dear to my heart. So I think it's true that everybody knows that we don't stay in our roles forever for our lifetime. Gone are those days. And so our customers will always experience fragmentation within an organization as we change. It's inevitable that they will miss somebody at some point and have to say goodbye to someone that they've grown to know. So how do we continue to perceive continuity and consistency when there is rarely continuity nor consistency? I think that the critical function here is understanding what does our customer need to experience for themselves, regardless of who delivers it, and then make who delivers it a secondary question, and who records it and where they record it a tertiary question. So if we focus on our customers' understanding of their own particular working environment, their wish list, the complications they haven't been able to challenge for several years, their own organizations, then we can focus on what they need to be able to achieve rather than who on our side delivers it. So I'm going to start there. Anyone else want to chime in or contradict?
And I think both the system and the processes need to change, including internal alignment across the customer journey, especially a customer journey that's customer-centric in terms of mindset. Today, most companies don't have departments that are dependent upon each other, or they do have departments that are dependent upon each other. And that's a very reactive thing. I'd like to see departments that support each other and set each other up for success. And that's proactive. And that's a completely different mindset in an organization.
Lenny, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with both thoughts. I think the other thing too is asking the questions around how is each team incentivized, and creating common metrics, right? Instead of optimizing for each of the departments and the roles and responsibilities, if we're all tasked with doing different things, then it doesn't matter how much we optimize the journey for the experience of the customer. We're still going to run into challenges if we are making moves or focusing on goals that then contradict what we want the customer to experience and the journey that we want them to go through. So I think leadership, having those conversations and being very transparent about those metrics and having those shared goals, then everybody understands how what they do day to day impacts the customer long term. Because everybody plays a role within the go-to-market motion on making a customer successful to deliver value and to achieve business outcomes.
And when you say everybody, so I was going down that path because we've been actually focused on the concept of the revenue team. What is your definition of the revenue team when you say everybody plays a role? You know, sure. I mean, you could say the entire company, but let's focus on the particular groups that really need to work well together. I would love to hear your list and see if it matches up with my list.
Sure. Marketing, sales, customer success, and product. I think from the CS lens, those are all departments that we work with.
Yes.
Engineering also plays a role. And if engineering and product are not aligned and engineering is not understanding what the customer is looking for, their experience, their outcomes, then it doesn't matter what the rest of the go-to-market teams say. If the engineering team is not building a product that will deliver an outcome, it doesn't matter if it looks good, if you have a flashy UI, if you believe in your features. If no one is using it, then what's the point? So we need to communicate that information and help them understand the work that they do, why it's so important, and how it does make an impact.
100%. That's exactly, and that was the list. That was my list. Exactly. It's good to get that validation because we believe that everybody needs to have that customer focused mindset, especially those four components. That is the revenue team.
Yeah. So, and one more thing just to add, because customer success, the flavor is different at each company. So I'm talking about all of the teams that come after sales, right? The post-sales. So implementation that could sit as professional services, right?
Yeah.
Education, support, customer success management.
Project management, anybody who's involved in helping the customer achieve what they're trying to achieve.
And I want to chime in and add to that too. Every company is different. And I think there's even companies where the legal team or the billing team have a significant part to play in what the customer's experience is in working with us. All right. If you're working with your Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 50 companies, your contracts could be 40 pages long. And those legal terms matter and the legal engagements matter. So it really becomes everybody, which is in a way, its own obvious thing. Of course, it's everybody. It's the whole company. The whole company produces what we're selling to our clients. So go ahead.
In a lot of organizations, they don't consider support as part of CS. They consider support separately, often reporting up to the chief operating officer, and sometimes account management, who's on that post-sale team also, may report in the sales and not be considered. So I'd add those to the list as well.
Agreed. Totally agree. And so in this way, we end up hitting every department in the company. So there's an interesting kind of corollary or story here, really. I think as a customer, if we think through what are all of the things that we as CS ask other departments to do on our customers' behalf, and what do all of these other departments ask us to do on our customers' behalf, or for permission or access to talk to a customer, it's easily possible that a customer could interact with 10 different people, 15 different people, maybe even 20 different people, depending on your company size and the product complexity that you're serving. And so with all of those people in the kitchen, and knowing that we can't generalize to one, we will always have handoffs, always. So an interesting thing I think that smooths out those handoffs is when, instead of looking at each individual challenge or problem or project that we have in a company as, all right, let's find the list of 100 customers who apply to this problem. When we keep the pulse on a regular basis, let's say a monthly check-in, for example, of a series of customers, understanding in each of these kind of departmental categories, what is the customer's desired objective? What are they trying to achieve, and what experience is considered appropriate, and what experiences detract from their perception of our company? They might call out, if we speak with our customers directly, for example, I've had these conversations where they'll call out errors on the marketing pages, or they will call out clauses in their contracts that are cumbersome and frustrating. They'll call out a system with the billing team that doesn't work well for them, or they'll call out something in the product that doesn't work, or something that doesn't work in their CS engagements. So it's important to look at it from one customer's perspective, start there, sometimes rather than our consistent approaches, which tend to be, here's my spreadsheet of customers and let's aggregate at the top.
That's an incredibly inside out thinking approach. You need to be thinking outside in. It's one of the first things that we teach, right out of the gate, thinking like a customer. Kristi, what do you got to? You've been unusually quiet.
Unusually quiet. I think that I'm aligned generally with what everyone's saying, and I think, McKayl, listen, I think that what you're saying is 100% accurate. I think it becomes a slippery slope when we try to dial these things in, right? So if it's for everyone, it's for no one. So I think it's just trying to figure out what are the things that we're trying to optimize for intentionally to make sure these things go as smoothly as possible. And I think that's what we're going to tackle today. So that would be my only additional comment to this part, Andrew. But I've got lots to say as we continue on. So ask the next question, sir.
Yes, ma'am. All right. I'm in trouble. That's that means I'm going to get talked to after this. All right. So let's start with the tenure problem, because I think it's underappreciated. If the average person is a critical customer-facing role is gone in 18 months, and you're trying to retain a customer for 5 or more years, what does that mean for how you build systems, documentation, institutional knowledge? How do you make the relationship bigger than any one person? When we talk all day about, we got to get people the right mindset. How do you do that? Where does that start?
Can I think it starts? Go ahead, Eleni.
I think it starts with planting the seed during the sales process on, that it takes a village to work with a customer. And while there may be one person who helps to herd the cats and maybe facilitate the conversation, just setting up the expectation who they're going to interact with along their journey and why it is important, right? We ask of them to have a project team ready, for there to be an executive sponsor, the champion, the end users, the IT lead. And then on our end, we're talking about the individuals they're going to interact with. So I think if we let them know that it is a team approach, and here are the various ways in which people will become involved and will come in and out of the process, then the customer's understanding, okay, I have this team that's working behind the scenes. It may be that Eleni's my main point of contact, but if I need something outside of her realm of expertise, she's going to bring people in, right? And I think we're used to doing that in customer success. I think the other thing is our customers probably also face a tenure problem depending on the industry that they're in. So why don't we just be more honest about the fact that you may be a customer longer than somebody is in the seat or they're getting promoted, right? So there will be change that happens, but what matters most is keeping that institutional knowledge. So the other just point I wanted to quickly make is just having a way for everybody to agree on where are we going to have information about this customer, the necessary points that are relevant. That way we don't have to keep asking them the same question over and over again. I know that this really annoys customers. There may be updates to that information as their business changes, but the last thing a customer wants to hear is like, okay, so tell me how you're using the product. Talk to me about all the things and why you bought, etc. They're going to, think to themselves, well, this person has no clue what they're doing. They did no prep work, and the company as a whole doesn't have a way for sharing information. So I think having that system set up will also just help. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy. If you're a small company, you just start with one repository, and then as you grow, you can find ways to automate and share that information. But it can't exist.
Company, you can use Google Docs and put all the notes in there and just go through and these days you have no excuse because you can feed that into Claude and say, provide me a summary and make sure it stays within these boundaries and yada, yada, yada. There's no excuse to show up unprepared. You should, if you are asking customer questions that they've already answered, you're doing it wrong. Period.
Absolutely.
Stop it now.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it can't be in your brain, right? It can't be in the CSM's brain or in the CSM's OneNote on their computer or in their physical notebook, because there are people that just like to take notes in a notebook. That is not going to be great because when that person leaves, they're not going to spend the time. Let me type up all my notes and share that information from you. So from the beginning, it's setting up that expectation internally on here's what we're going to do, where the information exists, and then how do we keep it fresh? So depending on the systems that we use, we make sure that information gets updated over time.
And the vast majority of technology that we're using these days to interact with others and our customers is Zoom, and it's recorded and can transcribe, and there's no excuse if you are showing up. I'm making it real clear. You're showing up and asking the same questions, you're doing it wrong. Stop immediately. No excuse.
Right.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it is you have to build systems that first have a single point of truth. And everybody that has to have access to it should have access to it. I have worked with some organizations where the single point of truth is the CSM, is the CRM, but only the sales team has access to the CRM. So things are getting written to the CRM, and the CSM is waiting for information to be transferred from the CRM to the CSP.
You know why that is, David?
Maybe it goes to Tableau.
It's because they're too cheap. They don't want to buy a license for the CSM.
Yeah.
Even though the CSM is responsible for, CS team is responsible for 65 to 80% of the lifetime revenue of the company, they don't want to spend the money for the seat.
Listen, Andrew, even when they do, though, let's be honest, right? Salesforce also has permissions.
Yeah.
If users across the org all have a license, not every license is treated equal, right? You log in and I see something completely different than the next person. So there also needs to be some continuity there.
Yep.
Yes. And I think optimizing too for what fields we are using, right? And are those fields that are required. And so when the CRM admin or individual that's responsible is looking to build out that structure, don't forget about customer success. It's not an afterthought, right? It's not a project you'll take on when you have time. It needs to be a holistic look at here's all the possible information we want to gather about a customer over time. And I think when you make the case that from that information, then marketing can figure out who is a referenceable customer, who do we want to invite to a webinar. If there's a success story or a use case that's going really well with a set of customers, then sales gets that information. So it's like we're trying to make everybody's lives easier, and there is more ROI and value to giving the access and setting up the process versus trying to share information via email and on Slack, because those are great ways to communicate, but not to house institutional knowledge. It needs to be somewhere that can then be pushed out to other systems or easily accessible by those that need it.
And I think we could easily go down the governance rabbit hole. And I know I want to get us back on track onto the conversation because I think we can all agree here. Most systems don't have the proper governance that they need in order for us to have any level of efficiency. But one thing I will go back to your question here, Andrew, with the tenure, right? The biggest issue here is consistency and continuity. And those two things don't exist in many organizations. I have been a customer of organizations where I've had multiple CSMs, multiple stakeholders, and I did not have a consistent experience from one to the other. Same role, same title, same responsibilities, completely fragmented experience working with these different people. There needs to be an intentional design to create consistency. And the continuity doesn't mean one person, right? It needs to be that continuity in the customer's communication to us and our ability to manage through that. Going back to things like omni-channel versus a multi-channel experience. I don't care that you could talk to me multiple places. I want to make sure that my data and what is being communicated is managed through all those mediums effectively. So those are the things that are going to create, I think, more disruption. And those are things that we can definitely break down here.
And I think there's a really interesting tie back, both Kristi and Eleni, back to incentives here. Very, very rarely are we having discussions with other departments about their own incentives outside of our post-sales work, right? Most commonly, I'm discussing incentives between sales, marketing, and CS. Those are the folks that I'm discussing and curious about their incentives and their structures. But across the organization, if we need documentation, that's really what we're talking about. Documentation consistently coming from each department, be that legal, marketing, sales, customer success, account management, implementation, support, name all of them. Then it needs to be a goal that is understood at the top level and understood that it needs to be incentivized. Otherwise, it is so easy for every single one of us to say, I've got 5 back-to-back meetings today. I need to prep for 3 of those to be customer calls. I don't have time to go streamline or clean up or organize or check that everything I've written down is going to get done. I'll do it later tonight, or I'll do it tomorrow morning. We're all human. We all experience that, even though we know it's important. So it helps to have incentives across the company aligned, not just in CS, but in each department, that those notes matter. They truly matter because, Kristi, you could get hit by a bus. I don't know why I'm saying that.
I'm winning the lotto. I'm not getting hit by a bus. I'm winning the lotto. If I leave, it's because
right. You
I'm
can
rich
win the
and I
lotto.
don't need anybody.
Any one of us.
If a bus hit her, I wouldn't want to see the bus afterwards.
If she wins the lotto, she's buying the bus that's going to hit Andrew.
There you go.
Whoa! Whoa! This went dark fast.
Damn.
I never said that, Andrew.
Wow. No wonder you got the Titanic behind you. You know, that's an interesting segue, McKayl, to my next question, which was on incentives. Every department has incentives that made sense when someone designed them. Sales rewards, closing, onboarding rewards, speed, CS rewards, and retention. But those incentives were designed in isolation. When you look across the full customer journey, right, where do those incentives actively work against each other, and who in the organization even has the authority to fix that? Back in the day when I launched one of the first customer success teams outside of Salesforce at Intact, my CEO at the time, who I know you might not believe this, but I butted heads with. One of the things that I really respected him doing was he made part of every single person's comp plan, from him all the way down to the guy who sat at the front desk, the receptionist. Everybody had a piece of their comp plan tied to NPS. What was the NPS score?
Other incentives.
I love that, right? But there needs to be, to your point, there needs to be incentives that drive a positive customer experience. And we don't, outside of customer success, we seem to be the only ones that are that are stuck with that. Hey, you have to drive retention and expansion. Well, what about all these other people that are part of that?
Yeah, incentives are a funny thing because typically they're siloed to a department, and ultimately it's the senior leadership team that has to align on how people get paid. And I think where they miss the boat is they don't align incentives around common organizational strategic objectives. So for example, if a strategic objective is new logo sales and it's not retention, right? Or it's not expansion, and the sales rep is responsible for both new logo acquisition and expansion. If they get 60% commission for new logo and they get 30% commission for expansion, you're never going to see any expansion. And the CS team is going to be left hanging in the lurch about expanding customers, and they're not getting paid for it, right? So it has to go, incentives have to go across departmental lines, and they have to be aligned to high-level strategic goals. What is it that we want to do? And we're all in it together to do those things. And incentives should reinforce that.
How about the variable component, how about 50% of your variable component, if you were part of that revenue team that Eleni mentioned, which I 100% agree with, 50% of your variable component is tied to retention. How would that change? How would that change things, right? Incentive drive behavior.
People would look at their jobs differently, that's for sure.
Yep. This is a fight that I've been fighting for years. Everything changed in technology when we moved from on-prem to the cloud. But the incentive structure didn't. The delivery did, the development process did, the sales process did, the marketing did. The one thing that didn't change was incentives. Except for the customer success folks, except for the post-sales team. The post-sales team got stuck with all the risk and really typically a cap on the reward.
I think it's a really interesting thought experiment to think through. If you think through how to systematize those incentives even. Let's take a really common scenario. You've got a team of CSMs and they tell you as their leader that they are constantly bogged down in chasing information. If we were in a classroom and everybody raised their hands, every hand in this room would be up. We've all experienced that. And if those CSMs can't find the information they need in product documentation, or they can't find the information that they need about the contract, so they can't find the information they need to solve problems, then we get into handoff problems and we get into time wasting. So what if, for example, there were incentives that said, we have a system to track every time a CSM or a post-sale person needs information from any department, from any kind of information for this customer. What if that was a ticket? We could count how many times we were lacking product documentation. It was a ticket. We could count how many times we went to our CRM and sales hadn't entered in some information, or the CSMs hadn't entered information. It'd be very enlightening and very interesting to see how often we do experience a gap on a day-to-day basis. It'd be a way to create a system behind these incentives for documentation and to kind of track improvement over time. But anyway, that's maybe a rabbit hole.
I think it's a huge rabbit hole, but I agree with you. The last thing I want to go down, and this is one of the reasons I started this company, was because I didn't want to implement systems anymore. So,
and here you are, still talking about implementing systems.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else have input on the incentives angle?
Yeah, I think there can be a misunderstanding of the outcome that customers want to achieve. I think we focus so much internally, particularly from a product perspective, on utilization. Like how many times are people logging in? Are they using, we've got this new feature and we want customers to like beta test it or to utilize it, right? We're speaking our own internal language of metrics that don't mean much to the customer and they mean zero to the executive sponsor. That's not the language that we should be speaking. And I think getting every department to speak that language and understand, okay, for this set of customers, here were their pain points. Here's how they're getting an outcome. Why don't we create an incentive for getting X percentage of customers to hit an outcome? Because if they hit their outcome and there's an ROI, they're more likely to renew. They're more likely to expand. But I think we just focus in other departments so much on like, we're building these new features and we know this is going to be a great product to use and we want them to renew. But in order for them to renew, it starts off on understanding the customer's business and speaking that language. So we need to articulate that across departments. And wouldn't it be great if we spoke the language of the customer in all of those areas?
It's a huge issue. We're getting ready to release a report, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that just is going to be very eye-opening to people on how much their efforts to keep customers are failing. And then it really is a bigger issue than just something that customer success should be dealing with.
You know, and incentives don't always need to be tied to NRR or GRR. I worked with a company not too long ago where the incentives were completely screwed up. Sales was paid on closing a deal. That's all they cared about. And they would sell anything and throw it over the wall to onboarding and customer success. And so one of the things we did was we created an ideal customer profile. And we set a metric that 90% of all new business that comes in has to be in confirmation to the ICP, right? And if it's not, the sales rep gets disincented for that. And so every month or every quarter, I don't remember what they decided to do, they would do a review of all of the new business that those reps brought in and how they conformed to the ICP. And they set metrics around that, and then they tied an incentive to it. Changed behavior pretty quickly.
Yeah, of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Just a reminder, folks, we will be getting to questions here in the next few minutes. So if you have questions, please use the Q&A button, or if you have something you want the panel to weigh in on, use the Q&A button, please. Let's see. We talk about alignment a lot in this industry, but I think we're often too polite about what misalignment actually looks like in practice. Misalignment by degrees, small disconnects that seem manageable, still puts the train off the tracks eventually. Anybody have an example of what slow drift looks like before it becomes a crisis?
I'll give an example here. I think it's very common for us to have a goal that we want to achieve as an organization, and we pass it down to our team members. And we then filter it through a variety of different people's words and phrases and explanations and understandings. Sometimes those simple misunderstandings of a concept or of a directive can really get us on different pages. I'm thinking of a pricing launch gone wrong in my recent history where people
it's like the game telephone, right?
Exactly.
Where you say something at the beginning and at the end it's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Happens all the time.
Yep. Take a product launch or a product roadmap discussion. This will be launched in Q3. And then that changes to soon. And then those don't all get updated for everybody. And so some folks in sales think it's in Q3. Some people think it's Q4. Some people say it's 2 weeks from now. It's very easy for small phrases and small things to create misunderstandings. And it really reinforces how important it is for us to both document and to publicly make sure we are course correcting when information changes. So there's, David, you'd made an interesting comment about incentives and how, right, they're not the end all be all, but how often do we as leaders or as groups make our lists of the behaviors that are happening in the org, small and medium and large, just writing them all down to think through how can we incentivize the correct behavior, whether it's a monetary incentive or not. Maybe it's a cultural change we can change. Maybe it's a way of leading a meeting differently. There's also a lot of different little things we can do to help close those small misalignments that get us too far away down the track.
Yes, Kristi.
Can I jump in? All right. So I've got something to add on that.
She's got something.
I got something. So something to add on that is, I think something else that we see as a breakdown is that oftentimes teams elevate those issues, concerns, or gaps to their leadership team instead of working directly with their peers to get those things resolved. When I was leading CS teams, I would have my CSMs come to me with their problems instead of going directly to their counterparts to go have an honest conversation of where something may have been broken. And so you need to be able to facilitate that cross-functional collaboration at all levels. It can't just be at the most senior levels, and people need to not be scared or whatever their reason is that preventing that. They have to be able to work together at all levels to go and resolve that.
Yeah, but Kristi, I mean, I get that, but there's a politically, and this was, the next question on the list, but there's a very politically tricky part, right, in understanding why each department behaves the way they do, and it requires you to look at their incentives and honestly and without judgment. And the problem is, especially in sales, and Eleni, you can probably you can attest to this, whether you agree or disagree. How do you have that conversation, especially when one of those departments is sales, and that conversation can easily turn into a blame session? You've got people who are.
I had a part two. I wasn't done.
Wait, can I add
go on.
Before you go to part two, can I comment on your part one?
No, not yet.
No,
okay.
but yeah.
So the part one is, I completely agree with you.
Wait, no, I said no, not yet.
Oh, no, not yet. All right. Okay.
Nobody's listening to Kristi. Come on.
I reserve the right.
I get yelled at for not speaking. I get yelled at for speaking. I don't know. I'm lost here.
I'm telling you, this Pomeranian thing is really turning into a... Sorry,
because I wanted to give an example to follow McKayl's example, is that in organizations, let's do this. Let's play this one out. There is required information, right? So customer success teams or post-initial sales teams will often need certain information to successfully move that customer through whatever journey it is. But sales stops selling once they've sold. right? So if a customer is in a sales process and they say, second call, you know what, just send me the contract, I'm ready to sign. Sales is not going to continue to have the 8 following discovery calls or alignment sessions that are required as part of the information gathering process that fulfills our needs, because now the deal is closed. They're going to send the paperwork, they're going to have that signed, and now that will continue to move through the process. I don't know a company that will say, let's slow down this sales process, let's go and have more conversations after the customer has already committed to the close. And so the reason I bring that up is now we've got this misalignment. We've got additional gaps in information, and we don't have the things necessary to continue to fulfill the experience for the customer. That is an organizational intentional design that is creating and facilitating these gaps. But tell me, Andrew, do you find organizations that are going to require the sales team to keep selling once it's sold?
So we actually solved that exact problem at Intact.
Go.
I sat down with my sales counterpart, Kathy Lord, great woman, still keep in touch with her, just saw her last year. And I said, listen, there's stuff that we need to be effective in the initial transition in the onboarding process. I said, I don't want to slow down your sales process because I understand how you are incented. You are incented to capture as much revenue, turn as many deals as possible. I get that. So what I want to do is I want to put a gate right before the sales rep, the customer's already signed. They cannot set the deal to closed won and therefore get paid for it until they've answered this list of 12 questions that we need to be properly educated on where the customer is at, right? We made most of them multiple choice, multiple select. There are a few free form texts. We told them you got to attach the value prop here, what have you. But that, and talk about incentives driving behavior. My team overnight, my team had so much more information in front of them before reaching out to that customer to have that initial discovery call. It wasn't asking the same questions over. It was validating, here's what we understand.
Why not have the customer, whomever the next person is, I won't say customer, say it could be implementation, CS, onboard, I don't care who it is. Why not have that person be a part of that conversation so that we don't have another need to transfer information? Because I don't disagree with what you're saying. And I had the same gates. There's always some gate, and Salesforce is fun like that. You can require information so that things don't actually close in systems. But if we're talking about handoffs, and that conversation is only happening after a contract is signed anyway, why exclusively leave that discussion with the salesperson instead of bringing that in so that more information is flowing through the org?
And in certain situations and in certain size customers, especially enterprise customers, 100% agree with you. As a matter of fact, the post-sales team, the key members of the post-sales team should be riding along in the latter stages of the deal before it's even done. So they've built up an understanding of the customer. They have connected with them. They've started to establish a relationship, 100%. But the reality is that I can handle that if I've got 5 large accounts. But if I got 50, 75, 100 accounts that I'm babysitting, it doesn't scale. That approach does not scale. So you got to have something to address the 80%, not the 20. Eleni, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts about this, but if you're closing a customer and you can't even answer some fundamental questions that then makes them not your ICP, do we even want to accept that deal? I think this goes back to your culture comment, Kristi. And if we're not creating a culture in which people can speak up when they're seeing that something is not working correctly and they work with their peers to try to figure it out, where people are not transparent about how they're incentivized and why are they moving, quickly. And also maybe us explaining to the prospect, here's why we need this information. That way, when we get started, you have the right people. Because I have a feeling in that example that you gave, they probably don't even have like their project team and the expectation setting set up. And it's not scalable to always have a CS person. But I think it goes back to what's the culture, and we need people to be able to problem solve at that individual contributor level and then bring up those trends. And, Andrew, you asked it becomes a blame session. It doesn't if you come with data and you're not going to say, you did this thing wrong, and I'm going to start with a laundry list of the ways that your team doesn't know what they're doing. It's you come to them with a specific example, you build a relationship of where I want to help you. I know how you're being incentivized. I don't want to get in the way of you making money, but I think we all need to be aligned with a customer closing that's going to renew. And I think you can hold the sales team responsible for that they are on the hook until that customer renews, or they're on the hook for them to receive the outcome. And there are some organizations that are forward thinking and are making that happen, or they're holding back commission payment until there is a successful transition and there is the kickoff call and things kind of go off. So I think
100%.
it's right. I think it's up to leadership to align on that, right? Sales and CS. And if you roll up under the same leader, maybe a little bit easier. If you don't, then there might be some clashing. But if you're not setting the tone for your team, then it kind of doesn't matter what the CSMs try to do. They're going to be spinning their wheels and they're never going to be effective, or they're going to say, what's the point of bubbling this up anyways? Nobody cares. And we're trying to fix things. And they're slapping our hands saying, don't do that. That's not the way we want to do things here.
Early in my career, I took that. I was a very confrontational. I know you might not believe this, Kristi. I was very confrontational. And
I'm glad you're not anymore.
I looked at salespeople, the sales team as they were the enemy. And then I took on that. I'm like, wait a minute, let's employ empathy here. Let's understand their perspective. This is what we teach also in some of our content. Hey, you need to think about it from their perspective. And approach this not as a blame game, but as this is a learning process for everybody.
And you stumble. I mean, I've had that too, where I made assumptions about a sales rep that I was working with on an actual customer renewal. And he was trying to do one thing and I was trying to do another. And in my mind, I created this narrative that he was trying to undermine me. He had no respect for the customer success team. And it's because I didn't understand how he was being paid. And then I just thought to myself, well, there must be another reason why he's acting this way, the behavior, right? It's not just out of the blue. He doesn't really know me. So how could he want to not make me successful? And then I just asked him, I'm like, I feel like maybe you're doing this because of how you're getting paid. And here's how I'm getting paid on this. And then we realized that there wasn't an alignment. And then that created conversations with our direct managers. And then that kind of bubbled up and we realized we can't be competing against each other, because then the customer also senses one is good cop, one is bad cop. And I'll just go to the person that's going to give me what I want. And that's not what we want to create, a culture of depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a different answer. We want the answer to be the same, whether you talk to sales or the CSM or the individual that's the executive sponsor for that customer.
But you need a strong leader to be able to have those conversations. I've experienced too many times where there's been a leader who's been too weak, that shied away from the conflict. I'm sorry, your job. And this we were talking about before we came on air, Kristi, when we were talking about the consulting work. Your job as a leader is to lead your team, right? That's not just your title, right? And so that means going to bat for them. That means, having these types of difficult conversations. We got to have, you expect your team to have difficult conversations with their customers, and you're not going to have a difficult conversation with your peer whose organization is causing pain to your team. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be a leader.
Oh gosh, that needs to be its own webinar. Can I just say one thing though on Eleni's point about the tying the sales to the renewals? I don't disagree with the intention behind that recommendation. I think it gets a little tricky if you're selling multi-year deals to tell a salesperson that you're not going to make money until this person renews if they're not renewing 3 to 5 years out. So I think that there needs to be a realistic framework, whether you're tying them back to retention percentage as a whole for the book on a quarterly basis and saying, you are all getting part of your commission based on our retention rates, or there is some earlier milestone that indicates that this was aligned and there was strong adoption, right? So it could be an effective onboarding or something that is just sooner than the renewal. Also, if a salesperson leaves, I have seen some organizations do this where a sales organization will pay an employee even after they have left the company if that customer renews. It was crazy. I only heard it once, but I loved the idea behind it because, again, incentivizing good behavior. You didn't have to be present to earn that money. You can get a check later. But I think it's important to understand all the nuances, right? So it just things to consider for folks that may have multi-year renewals in place. Figure out something because your sales team is coin operated. They're in that role to make money. And if you tell them that they're not going to make their money for years, it's going to be hard to drive a certain level agency and urgency behind their work.
That's an interesting to actually pay you after you've left. Hey,
crazy. I didn't believe it when I heard it. I was like, good for you all.
Okay? So just setting the expectation. Let's get to some questions, because we got some questions. If I could ask my guests to take a quick look at that Q&A list. Remember, we go based off of most upvotes. So make sure to select your pull down menu to most upvotes. If you see a question on that list that you think you've got something that you to say that you want to jump in first, hit that answer live button. We do not type answers, folks. So all of these questions, though, as well as the answers, will be in the transcript that we'll post on the website early next week, along with the recording. So if you have to leave us here at the top of the hour, please check back on the website early next week when all that stuff will be posted. All right. I see a couple of people jumping in. No, I don't see anybody jumping in. All right, let's just start asking the questions. So first question comes from Janelle. Janelle, thanks for joining us. Janelle asks, how is AI being used, if at all, to improve or automate parts of the handoff process? Anybody? Yes? Oh, Kristi. Oh my God, Kristi wants to talk. Yes, Kristi, what do you got?
No, I don't want to talk.
No, yes, you do.
Okay, great. I had a good answer. So going back to the hygiene in the CRM, if all of the information is being captured properly, if you've got all of, whether you're using Gong or Fathom or whatever your call recording is, all of those things, you can actually generate a really beautiful summary. We've actually created a ChatGPT, our own private GPT just for this, that synthesized all the information that happened during the deal cycle with required outputs. So it very much quickly just said, here's all the information that the CSM needs to be successful moving past that close. And so it took all of that information. It no longer required the salesperson to go fill in additional fields or to go fill out a doc. And then what happened there and what we did is that we added in just a short 15-minute conversation between the two stakeholders. And that was really just to answer questions. So all that information was captured. They got everything that they needed. It went back into calls. And then also with that prompt, the CSM could go ask the prompt questions. So even if the output was great and they still wanted to dig a little bit deeper into certain things, it would go back. And so again, we have all the call recordings and all the information there. You can ask additional information to make sure that you have everything you need, have a quick 15-minute sync to fill any gaps or to just make sure that you have everything you need to be successful. And that streamlined the process pretty significantly.
Kristi, you can even take that a step further, and you can use AI to create automated handoffs for low-value customers.
Yeah.
So you can have AI listen to all of the sales calls, understand what the customer's pain points are, what the desired areas of outcomes are, what the roadblocks might be, what products were sold, and then put that all in a report or in an email that goes to a shared CS team, if that's what you have for your long tail, right? And automate the entire process.
Yeah, I didn't have all of the tools to connect it, so only speaking from my workflow that I created, which was a little less, I had less access to technology.
Just make sure that you are structuring your prompts well, that you're validating the output. There's a dangerous piece of AI, which we're actually getting ready to release an AI for customer-facing teams training program. I just finished recording it last night, so I'm hoping we have it ready in the next 2 weeks. But sometimes AI comes back with something that sounds very legitimate, convincing, and it's bullshit. So please be careful before sending stuff to others in your organization or to your customers. You need to make sure you're validating, and that you're also validating not only the data and what it's seeing, but the tone and how receptive the person who's going to be receiving that is going to be to what you have to say. So super, yes, AI can hallucinate, Michael. Yes, it's actually not. They call it hallucination. I more refer to it as AI just being creative. AI is being creative. So
they fill in the gaps with there's missing information. They make assumptions.
They do, because AI is not a thinking machine.
Right,
It is a,
right.
It's.
Yeah. The other cool thing you could do is if you have the ability to summarize any account information. So if you've got a handoff, if a CSM is leaving, moving to another account, got promoted, whatever, and you're having one CSM take over for the other, it also does a really great job of synthesizing all the information about the account over an extended period of time. So instead of having to go back and read all the call notes and go check all of the summaries and the updates and sentiment analysis and all this, growth, contraction, all that, it'll synthesize that nicely. So if you're taking over an account from somebody, there's a really easy way to get up to speed fast. So that way, again, there feels like continuity and consistency for the customer.
Yeah, it's a great customer dossier creator.
Yeah.
100%. We actually have a prompt as part of our program that we provide for that as well. Awesome. Anybody else want to weigh in on the AI piece before we move on?
I mean, just a suggestion, look into what existing technology you're already using, because in many cases there is an AI component. So rather than feeling like you need to go out and get the next shiny, bright object, because there are too many options out there. I think there's a platform actually that does like handoff process and just focuses on that, right? That's very niche. So
Pretty
look
sure
into
it's called Handoff.
And there you go. Look into what your CRM can do. Look at like what a Gong can do or other call recordings. I think chat is also like great, but you may have existing technology, the features that you're just not taking advantage of.
You're thinking of a different website, Kristi. All right, let's go to. All right, let's go to the next question. Are you getting flush? You're turning a little red there. All right, Cameron. Hey, thanks for joining us.
I have too much makeup for you to see what color my face really is.
Cameron asks, I'm a founding CSM at my company and currently have been tasked with building my sales to CS handoff. I've already started, but based on today's conversation, I'd love to know where I should start. We have HubSpot, but we live in a lot of spreadsheets and little to no organization. David, you wanted to jump in on this one first. What have you got for Cameron?
Yeah, Cameron, this is a great question. And oftentimes, we're nobody's prescribing for us what to do. We're being tasked with create this from scratch and our heads are spinning. I would say start with the information that you have to have in order to be successful. What is it that sales should know? Maybe they know it, maybe they don't. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But what is it that you need to know to be successful, right? So if you're doing onboarding, obviously you have to know what products were sold, but you also have to know what customizations were promised, what integrations were promised. Oftentimes those things get left off. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you that we sold this basic tool, but we're adding 3 things to it, and those 3 things get missed. And at the end of onboarding, the customer is pissed off and that you didn't even know it. Right? So think about the things you must know. You should know why the customer came to your company to begin with. What pain
value
point are they trying to solve?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You should know what their desired outcomes are. Maybe if you're advanced enough, it would be nice to break that into first value and then future value, right? What is the first thing they want to do with the product that they couldn't do before they came to us? And then what are the other desired outcomes they're looking to achieve? If they have a specific time frame in mind that they have to be live by to meet a commitment they made to their customers, you have to know that too, because you might have to compress a 4-month onboarding into a 2-month onboarding, right? So think about those things, and I'm sure everybody else has opinions on other things that you have to know as well, but that's a good starting point.
That was one of the most frustrating things that I faced when I was working, doing consulting, working with companies. When they would complain, the post-sales team would complain, well, we don't understand what what the value is, why they came to do business with us.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a fundamental breakdown in your organization. Because your customer did not come to do business with you to spend money. Somebody knows that. Sales knows that. And the fact that you have to ask that question, this is a conversation I'm having with the CS leader, the fact that you have to ask that conversation during the kickoff call is a non-starter in my book.
And completely frustrating for the customer.
Pardon?
And completely frustrating for the customer.
Exactly. And this goes back to my example when I was at Intact. Frustrated the hell out of me. Like, this is not okay. You guys, the sales team is selling the customer. You are selling, there's a reason why they're buying from you. We need to understand that before we get on the phone with them. Anybody got something to add for Cameron?
Yeah, you need to know the stakeholders, right? That's really important. Not just, oh, pass me off to the team that's going to be using it. I need to be introduced to the executive sponsor. They will play a role in this engagement and the long-term success of the relationship. So understanding who each of those people are.
And what makes them tick. And what makes them
yes.
tick, right?
What's their personality
this person's
like?
passive aggressive. This person's right. You should be capturing that 100%.
It helps to set you off on the right foot when you are then having the conversation with them in terms of how to speak to them and what resonates. Maybe there's also things they're really passionate about. So, but you also could do your research on that too, using AI, but they should be capturing at least each of the different stakeholders that matter to your company.
Some good suggestions. Anybody else?
I'd like to add something here. There's something I've done at numerous companies, which is I call it the 100 questions list. But the idea is that when we are, and bear with me for a second here, the idea is that when we are saying what we predict is going to happen to the CSM, this account is green, this account is yellow, this account will renew, this account won't renew, whatever. When we do that, we're basing it on a degree of confidence, but that confidence has to come from somewhere. And what's more important is often to know out of, say, 100 questions about the organization, which can include your stakeholders' personalities, how they tick, how they work. It can include the function, the organization layout. It can include all kinds of things. How many of those things do we just not know the answers to? And any of those things that we just don't know the answers to that we really kind of ought to, that is something that can blindside us. So this 100 questions list, this relates to one of the questions here in the chat or in the Q&A as well. The idea is that we want to know what we don't know but ought to know, and know that much like our lives, it's chapters being written over time and we can't get everything from day one. So having a very practical sort of example notes template of that information that we want to capture, even if it is not what you're going to fill out in actual fields in the CRM, that comprehensive template can illustrate to your CSMs, especially as they're growing through their careers, what over time you really want to capture about an organization and give them a place to practice doing that. So I think that would be something I would really encourage to most folks here. Think in advance about what you really want to know and then give yourself a timeline by which to know it.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. David, you can hit the done button under Cameron's question for me, please. Let's do the refresh. Our next question comes from Miguel. Miguel, thanks for the question, and thanks for joining us today. What is the best way to do a handoff between sales and CS? Should a meeting between sales, CS, and the merchant always happen? And David, looks like you want to jump in on this again first. So
yeah,
what have you got?
I'm going to start with, it depends what customer segment you're talking about, right? If you're talking about enterprise, strategic, or maybe commercial on the higher end, having a meeting between sales and CS is probably important, even if it's only a 10 or 15 minute meeting. You should always do the internal meeting before you get on the phone with the customer. You both want to be completely aligned before you have that customer call. If you're doing a handoff for your SMB or your long tail or your digital touch, whatever you want to call it, you might not need to have a meeting. You could do a report, or you could do an email. You can have AI do that for you, as we talked about before. And then whether the salesperson is on the kickoff call or not, personally, my preference is to have that salesperson on there. It holds them accountable for making sure that they delivered all of the information and the information was accurate. So I like that. Some sales leaders don't want their salespeople on those types of calls. They want them to go back and sell something else. But that's where I would start it.
I like that. I think it's important. I think it's important to hold sales accountable.
Yeah, I think the other thing is setting the expectation that the meeting is not for you to read through the information you were given beforehand. The meeting is to clarify and ask questions about anything that was unclear or anything that may be missing or raising your concern. So we're not everyone be an adult and look at the document and then come in. It's very obvious, if you haven't done that. And again, that goes back to setting expectations, right, of your teams to say, we're going to make this a 15-minute meeting, and here's why it can be a 15 meeting.
Or anything that may have changed, right? It's validation, and it should be validation. There's nothing more frustrating for a customer than answering the same questions over and over again. Anybody else? We got time for a few more questions. Ralph asks, Ralph, thanks for joining us. Ralph asks, what fields would you consider as critical as a single point of truth and resource for the whole post and pre-sales team? I think right out of the gate, understanding why the customer is doing business with you is number one.
I think the technical field, so what David was mentioning, right? If there's, for the implementation team, what are the integrations, the APIs they'll be using? Are we building something custom? And any other expectations we've set around the implementation process. I think the stakeholder information, and obviously there's just like the revenue components, like how long is this contract? Are there any specific things about the contract that we need to keep in mind because they may have to hit certain milestones, or just anything that's unique outside of our standard agreement?
Promises that were made that may not be in the contract, but part of a discussion.
Timeline. Is there a compelling event that's going to happen where they need to be live and operating for them to hit their commitments to other people?
And the next question from Beth. Thank you, Beth, for joining us and asking the question. I think this is relevant. What information do you wish sales provided to CS that is consistently not provided? And I've already voiced my frustration about sales not providing. Why are they doing business with us? What's the value?
I want to go a step further on that, though. I want a SMART goal. I want something that I can measure. Like, how are we measuring success? I think it's one thing to understand how they might be defining it, or like what is their objective. But like, I find that most CSMs struggle to get that. And the struggle, I think we could put the onus on our customers. They don't even know, but then we're not guiding them properly. It's a chicken and egg thing. But that, to me, the measurement of success would be something I would want to see, that I see is often a blank field.
Well, I think, let's be realistic. It's something that you have to define in order to move forward. You have to put that on a success plan. We have to have a target. How do we define success?
Right.
100% agree with you. But to your point, I think your customers have a hard time verbalizing that.
I think at a company level, a lot of companies could do a better job of having something pre-designed that helps guide your customers to get there. I see a lot of companies that kind of like, well, tell us, right? And it's a blank sheet of paper and your customers don't know what they don't know. You're supposed to be the expert. I think companies could do a better job of having a framework to help guide these customers towards measurable outcomes and those defined metrics.
100%.
Give them a little bit of a buffet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an ROI calculator, because in many cases it's you get the qualitative. Well, why do they buy? What's the problem they're trying to solve? And the answer that sales gives is something that's marketing jargon that's on our website, and it's not. Sometimes I don't know if they're fully understanding how to ask the question in discovery on how is this going to impact your business, and if as an organization you don't know how to quantify either, time savings, increase in revenue, increase in efficiency, and there being that shared language, then you're leaving success up to the executive sponsor to decide, and not maybe even share with you how he or she is going to measure success, and then you're never going to win. So I think as a recommendation is, if you don't have the ability to articulate it in a quantifiable way, then that exercise needs to happen as an organization. So at least everyone is consistently asking the question and documenting the information, because I've seen that.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think you need to have an inventory. Here are the typical value that a customer can get, and you use that as a tool. But here's another opportunity where you can leverage AI, and it's actually something that we talk about in the training program around tree of thoughts. Give me this concept called tree of thoughts. Based off of all this input, I want you to give me a couple of different options on how we could frame a value proposition for this customer, because it doesn't matter what we put together. We have to be able to translate that into the customer's world, right? So it's not just, I've got this list. There's no easy button here. Definitely. And there shouldn't be an easy button, because this is one of the most important things you can do in your customer facing role. is understanding and articulating the value that they're getting from doing business with you. If you want your customer to buy more from you, whether that's a renewal or it's an expansion, you better be damn clear on here's the value you're getting and tying it to quantifiable, specific outcomes, right? Before you can even begin to ask them for more money. Identifying and communicating value.
I want to add to this too. These are really excellent points. There's a critical function here is how not just our own leadership teams and our own team members understand, but how our customers understand objectives and key results. If your team of customers, 5 core contacts, whoever they are, cannot articulate and cannot design well-written objectives, key results, measurable results, then they will struggle. They will struggle through every part of your process because they can't prove value. So it's critical that we have during implementation and regularly during a relationship with the customer post-implementation, essentially an OKR workshop where we teach our customers, hey, just to refresh you, you might remember this. Here's how you work through an OKR. I want to do this with you. I want to take an hour to question, think deeply, and really create those objective statements. Because like Kristi mentioned, like Eleni mentioned, if we say, what are your objectives? They're just going to give us a garbage sentence and they don't really know yet. It takes time to think through.
Yeah, I want to separate this by going back to Beth's question about the sales to CS handoff, and then where we're taking it right now, and that is understanding how to define success long term so that we could retain and expand our customers. In my opinion, success plans need to start with the sales rep in the latter stages of the sales process. And in most cases, I understand that users, admins, they may not be able to articulate what success should look like in the future. But when somebody is buying a product, they're typically more of a senior executive, they're a decision maker. They should be able to clearly articulate, I need to raise this from this percent to this percent. I need to generate this from this level to this level, right? So we should know that. And the answer to Beth's question, in my opinion, is that information that the sales rep has heard from the buyer needs to be translated to the post-sales team, right? Then, McKayl, to your point, and Andrew's your point, we need to teach our CSMs how to ask the right discovery questions to understand additional pain points and what those future desired outcomes should look like, and then define success in the customer's words.
By the way, that's in the training as well. I know.
Can I say one more thing? Because there's another question. There's another question.
I'm trying to sell my stuff here. Okay.
We don't ask in the process, right? We don't ask the customer how they're measuring internally today, because we have data that's in our platform, but in many cases to articulate an ROI and get a CFO or a economic buyer to sign off, there are metrics that they're using themselves. And that's where our data and their data needs to be married together and delivered in a value review to paint the full picture. And I think at times we just get shy to ask for that, or we don't set that up at front. So if that was a question during the sales process, it would help everyone at the company working towards this goal of getting the customer value. And that's something
I think you nailed it, the shy thing. And the thing with that is, the ridiculous part of that is, Eleni, is that the person who you would be asking that information from is likely the person who was the one who said, hey, we need this vendor. So they have a motivation to supply you with that information so that they look good. Hey, I look like the smartest person inside these 4 walls because I partnered up with you.
Yeah. And if they don't want to share it, then, I think you voice your concern. Why? Because we're sharing data from our platform, right? And you've got metrics too. So I think that'll indicate how successful is this relationship going to be and how much is it going to be? We have to give you everything, but you're not going to work with us in return. And I think it gives you a sense of, can this customer thrive in working with us? And are they going to do their work? Because we talk a lot about what we need to do to get things done, but there's a certain level of expectation on the customer side on what they need to do in this relationship as well.
Well, that's what's laid out in the success plan. Also something we teach. But we're gonna wrap things up. One last question I want to answer for Teresa. Do you feel professional services falls under CS, or should they be separate departments or teams? I personally believe they should fall under CS because they play a really important role in helping the customer get first time to value, get value out of the solution. It's all customer success. Everything post sales should be customer success. And with that, we've reached the end of today's session. I want to start by thanking our panelists for sharing their perspectives and their experiences. Of course, my lovely co-host, Kristi, and for not beating me up too much. And these conversations are only as valuable as the people willing to be honest about what's actually happening in the work. And we truly appreciate you all making the time. To everyone who joined us live, thank you for your questions, your engagement, and for being part of this community. If you found today's discussion useful, we'd love for you to continue the conversation on LinkedIn, tag one of us or Success Hacker, and share a takeaway that struck with you. Our next CS Mastermind is coming up on April 15th. Where we'll be exploring how customer success teams avoid taxes. No, how customer success teams move beyond product features to consistently driving, measuring, communicating the value that matters the most to customers. So kind of follow on from what we were just wrapping up with. And once again, you might be surprised, but I definitely have something to say on that. We also have a training program. We're still looking for a panelist for that one, by the way. So if you're interested in participating, please let us know. Finally, great customer-focused professionals don't pretend to have all the answers, but they do know where to find them. And that's exactly why we created this series. Have a great rest of your day and month, and we'll see you next time.